All right, everyone. So let's talk about a subject that everyone and their mothers are talking about. Literally, everyone and their mothers are talking about this subject. I'm referring to the ubiquitous Great Reset. All of the conservatives are talking about it. The right-wingers are warning everyone about the Great Reset, and the lefties are laughing at everyone who is speaking ill of the Great Reset. So I spent about 5 hours, and I'm not exaggerating, I spent about 5 hours looking through information on this Great Reset because I really wanted to just get to the bottom line of this thing. It's like everyone is talking about this, and I need to know what the hell this thing is. So I'm going to try to give you guys my commentary on this thing. Is the Great Reset the system of the Antichrist? Is the Great Reset the next Third Reich or something like that? I don't think so. I don't think so. But what I will say is that the Great Reset is a reflection of what we are shifting towards. What the world, what the global populace is shifting towards, politically speaking. So the Great Reset is about reforming the conventional view of capitalism. So what is that about? A lot of people are saying that the Great Reset is about communism, that it's about bringing in Marxism, ushering in a Marxist utopia. The Great Reset is not about that. The Great Reset is not about destroying capitalism, because the Great Reset was an idea contrived by capitalists. So the Great Reset was it was thought out by a German economist who is the founder of the World Economic Forum. His name is Klaus Schwab. And Klaus Schwab, for decades, actually for about a half a century, for around 50 years, this Klaus Schwab guy has been pushing for the concept of stakeholder capitalism, because we have become accustomed to the concept of shareholder capitalism. So the way it works is like this. It's not that complicated. Corporations in the United States are focused on satisfying their shareholders. So if I buy a share of a particular company, I am a partial owner of that company, no matter how small of that part of that ownership is. I mean, it's just one share. Nonetheless, I am a partial owner of that company. I have a share. I have invested money in that company. So the one who owns the majority of the shares has the most power over that company, because he is the biggest investor of that company. He's the biggest investor into that company. In the United States, there is a huge emphasis on shareholders. The majority of corporations in the United States get invested in by shareholders, private investors. It's a little bit, it's actually a lot different in Europe. In Europe, corporations are, for the most part, dependent on the banks for money, for loan money. So if the banks go down in Europe, then corporations are devastated. Businesses are devastated. Whereas in the United States, America, because of the shareholder system, can actually recuperate faster than Europeans. It's why the Americans were able to recuperate and recover from the 2008 economic crisis at a faster rate than the Europeans did with their economic crisis, which really materialized in 2010. It's because American corporations rely on shareholders more so than European corporations, which rely mainly on banks for investment. So what Klaus Schwab wants to do is replace shareholder economics or shareholder capitalism with stakeholder capitalism. So what is stakeholder capitalism? Stakeholder capitalism is when a corporation doesn't focus solely on pleasing the shareholder, but rather works on trying to satisfy everyone, not just the shareholder, but the employees as well. So stakeholder capitalism, in theory, puts more of a focus on pleasing the little guy or the employee, the staff. So some people are reading into this Great Reset thing, and they're like, well, this is all about socialism. You see, it's all about helping workers, and it's just like socialism. It's just another form of capitalism. And even if all these corporations adopt stakeholder capitalism, it doesn't necessarily mean that employees are going to have it better off. It doesn't necessarily mean that. What it could mean, and this is very, very likely, and there are a number of commentators who have said this, what it could mean is that big corporations will adopt stakeholder capitalism as a way to just put up a front, like, hey, look, we are changing things. We're not just focused on the shareholders. We're also focusing on our employees. We're bettering the status of our workers. We're bettering work conditions. We are giving more pay. We're raising the pay. We're raising minimum wage, et cetera, et cetera. Meanwhile, behind the curtains, they're giving lots and lots of money to shareholders, and this is actually a concern that I read. Because stakeholder capitalism has more of a focus on the employees and on the staff of the corporation and on the owners of the corporation, like the staff, both the higher level staff and the lower level staff, it would make it easier for executives to give themselves bonuses. It's like, well, we're focusing on the staff. We're the staff, right? So it's not really going to end anything. It's not really going to end the status quo as far as these big CEOs and executives being super duper rich. Let's not forget, like, what does the World Economic Forum consist of? It consists of super rich people. And when I mean super rich, I'm not talking like, some guy who's got $1 million in the bank. I mean, these people are worth billions. And they are a lot of pernicious and insidious people who are in the World Economic Forum. There's nothing really that pleasant about the World Economic Forum. It's creepy. It's the people in there are very, very questionable, to say the least. I remember reading about the World Economic Forum years ago and how you just have some very interesting people who go there. I remember years ago reading about Peter Thiel, who was in the World Economic Forum, and Peter Thiel is big, right-wing, Silicon Valley, technological elite, believes in eugenics. A really, really creepy guy. He was close to the Trump administration. He was part of Donald Trump's defense council or something like that. He was within the Trump administration, and he was also quite a big financer for Trump's campaign, I remember. And he was part of the World Economic Forum. He was a part of that gang, that gang of elites, technological elites. So going back to this whole Great Reset thing, it's not like I'm defending. Don't think that I'm trying to defend the Great Reset. This Great Reset thing is very questionable. But what I'm simply saying is I don't think it's going to change much in regards to the fact that you have these super rich people. It's not going to, bring them down from their thrones. It's not going to take away all their money and give it to the poor. That's not going to happen, because the plan of the Great Reset is being supported by hundreds of super rich ass people, billionaires and executives and CEOs. And you think they're going to give all their money away to some people working at Burger King? Like, you think they're going to give all their money away to average folks? No. So as far as the existence of super rich people, okay, the Great Reset isn't going to change anything. Is the Great Reset going to put people in the gulags? No, it's not, because it's from the World Economic Forum, and not every country has to follow it. Like, we're not obligated to follow the World Economic Forum. It's like saying the UN put up some mandate and now everyone's going to follow it. It's like, you don't have to listen to the UN. And they are things that the UN proposes that a lot of countries ignore because it goes against their interests. Why do you think Iran isn't exactly like the biggest obeyer, or hasn't been the biggest obeyer of what the United States demands of it? It's like, well, why should we follow you for? Israel doesn't follow the United Nations. Even though the United Nations has told Israel to do certain things, like get rid of settlements, Israel doesn't really give a damn. Going back to eugenists in the World Economic Forum, Steven Pinker was actually a part of the World Economic Forum. He is actually listed as an agenda contributor to the World Economic Forum, and Steven Pinker is a big eugenist, like a big eugenist. I remember writing about Steven Pinker. He believes in the whole genetics and IQ thing. He became very popular amongst the American right wing. He even believes that infanticide is okay. The guy is very, very evil. So to hell with the World Economic Forum. I don't like this whole Great Reset thing. I don't like it at all. There are things in the Great Reset which are very strange. But I will say that the concept of the Great Reset is not exactly original, coming out of the World Economic Forum. For one thing, Naomi Klein, she wrote an article for The Intercept on the World Economic Forum, and she talked about how it's not really going to change anything. It's not going to change the status quo as far as capitalism goes. It's not going to change the status quo as far as super rich-ass people, being in their positions goes. But she basically said that the World Economic Forum numerous times has put out projects like the Great Reset, and nothing has changed. So, for example, in 2009, the World Economic Forum came up with a plan called Shaping the Post-Crisis World. And this was in 2009, which is, when we were still going through the effects of the 2008 economic crash. And it was a crisis, and they proposed this plan. Nothing has changed. The World Economic Forum puts out these plans in the midst of crises as a way to try to capitalize on them. But it doesn't necessarily mean that these plans are ever going to materialize. In 2010, they came up with a plan called Rethink, Redesign, Rebuild. And then in 2012, they came up with a plan called the Great Transformation. Sounds like the Great Reset, right? And then in 2018, they came up with a plan called Creating a Shared Future in a Fractured World. Again, none of these plans have really changed much of anything. But nonetheless, what I will say is that what the World Economic Forum has been proposing and what they have been predicting, because the World Economic Forum doesn't just prescribe things, they also describe things. So what they bring out is both prescriptive and descriptive. They will propose ideas, but they also describe the condition of the world, and they also describe what the world will look like in accordance to their predictions, and those predictions are based on what they analyze around the world. But before I get into that, because I do want to get into that, I want to get into a little bit of the weirdness of the Great Reset, because it is weird. I don't like the Great Reset, and if God forbid they ever try to impose what the Great Reset wants, God help us. Andrew Stuttaford, I almost stuttered that. Andrew Stuttaford came up with an article on the Great Reset, and this is what he wrote. He said, helped by public sector direction setting and better alignment between public policy and corporate planning. And this is him describing what the Great Reset wants. We ought to expect a future of controls and constraints where, quote, planetary care will be as important as personal care. So what the Great Reset wants is a huge fixation on environmentalism, putting more focus on environmentalism as opposed to individual desires. So in other words, you're selfish. You want this makeup, you want to ride this car, and it's just filling the air with toxins, and you want to ride on an airplane, and you want to travel your lavish lifestyle. Stop being so selfish. Put the earth before your life. And that sounds really, really noble, right? Like, put away your lavish lifestyle. Put away your richness and your wealth and your greed and your selfishness, and just focus on the planet, because that's what matters. Agriculture and farming, that's what matters. And you listen to that, and it's like, wow, that actually does sound noble. Like, yeah, we should put some care on the planet. Yeah, we should put some care on agriculturalism. Absolutely. I mean, we live off of the earth. Like, our food comes from the earth. Well, I don't eat vegetables. I just eat meat, so that doesn't apply to me. Yeah, if you just eat meat, guess what you're eating? You're eating cows. What do cows need to survive? They need grass. They need plants. They need hay. Oh, you eat chicken all the time? You love eating chicken breast after your yoga classes? You like eating chicken breast as you wear your yoga pants? Oh, what do chickens eat? Chickens eat grain. They eat plant-based foods. They eat corn. Oh, where does that come from? It comes from the earth, dumbass. So yes, we need to have some care for the earth. Like, I'm not one of these knuckle-headed right-wingers who's like, well, I don't care about the earth. I just want to ride my Hummer and eat steaks all day and just, listen to country and Western music. Like, I'm not one of those types of people. We need care for the earth. But what I will say is that everything has its limits. Because while we should care for the earth, and the Bible does say we have to be stewards of the earth, right? And while I don't agree with, or I don't believe in animal cruelty, I completely reject it. In fact, the Bible actually condemns animal cruelty. At the same time, I don't believe in putting animals over humans. I don't believe in putting nature above humans. And I understand that what environmentalists do all the time is they take true things, like the importance of taking care of the earth, the importance of not polluting the ground, the importance of having rich and strong and healthy soil in order to have food to sustain us. While I understand that, I also understand that they mix those truths with lies. They mix those truths with nefarious and dangerous ideologies like population control. Oh, you want to have that 8th child? Oh, you want to have that 4th child? Oh, that's too many people in the world. They're just going to consume Mother Earth's natural resources. They're going to destroy that. Every time you have a child, Mother Earth weeps. She weeps with her black oiled tears, which we suck out of her to feed the cars. So that's bad, right? That's scary. So what else does this Great Reset teach? So Stutterford goes on to say, to take a few examples, there will be limits on material consumption. You can't buy that. An emphasis on responsible eating. Gotta eat healthy. Healthy body, that means a healthy Reich, guys. It's a healthy Lebensraum, healthy living space. Vacationing nearer to home. Oh, you want to take that flight to French Polynesia? Well, you can't do that. Just take a road trip. Yeah, just take a road trip. You don't need that. And while I do agree that we travel, we're in COVID times, so not anymore. But before COVID, we were traveling like crazy. Like, I wasn't. I mean, the last time I went on vacation was to Italy, but that was in 2019, and that was the first vacation I had taken in years. So I'm not a traveler. But from what I was seeing, people were traveling like crazy. Like, you had people with just regular day jobs who were just taking trips all over the place. They got $100-something, $120. They got a cheap ticket, and they were just traveling all over the place. Like, what's this obsession with traveling? So I agree, we were traveling way, way too much. But because of COVID, Now we're traveling less, and we have become conditioned to several things. We have become conditioned to, for one thing, the reality that our world, our comfortable world, can just collapse any year. Can collapse. The comforts, our conveniences may just end. So we've become conditioned to that reality. It's hit us right in the face. We have become used to staying home more, right? We become used to staying home because everybody just wanted to go out all the time. Nobody was cooking. Everybody was going out to eat before COVID. Now we're cooking a lot more. We're gardening a lot more, right? I mean, at least that's what I saw in the first few months of the coronavirus era. Maybe that's all gone because we have drive-thrus and all that stuff. But nonetheless, we have become hit with the reality of, you know what, I should garden. You know what, I should cook more. So there's that. And then the thing that COVID has done is it has forced us into a conversation to confront the conventional system of capitalism, which we have become so used to. And I think that's what these people are doing. They're capitalizing on this because so many people have been laid off, right? Millions and millions of people have had to apply for unemployment. A lot of small businesses have been destroyed. Tons of small businesses have been destroyed. Big corporations have gotten more powerful because now we're more reliant on them. Big corporations like Amazon have become more powerful because we became a lot more reliant on Amazon because we were all staying home. So it's like, oh, well, I'll just order it on Amazon. Well, I want this little iPod USB cord. Up, get it on Amazon. Oh, I want this adapter cord for my Xbox. Oh, get it on Amazon. We were ordering everything on Amazon. So Amazon got more powerful, got a lot wealthier. Smaller businesses got destroyed. So this has forced people to rethink the system that they have been so used to. So it's like, well, this system kind of sucks. I mean, it's great when everything is going well, but when we have a crisis, it's the survival of the fittest. It's, the strong will get stronger and the weak get destroyed. So now what do? It's forcing people to rethink this. It's forcing people to rethink globalization. It's like, well, you have people in France and Italy who went on strike, worker strikes, because they were working for Amazon. They were afraid of getting COVID, and they were working in dirty working conditions where people were getting infected, and they were pissed off about that. It's like, well, we're working as slaves, essentially. We're being treated like slaves for some big American, multinational corporate empire. It's like, why are we doing this for? We should be working for French businesses. We should be working for French small businesses. We should have cottage businesses, cottage economies. And it's like, well, I got laid off from my job. I was a good worker. I worked really hard, but this pandemic came and the lockdown came, and it's like, well, I had to get laid off. It's like, well, we need to have a system to provide more financial security for the working man. So what the global reset is, in my opinion, it's not the system that's going to rule the world with Bill Gates as the Antichrist or whatever. I don't think. I mean, I could be completely wrong, right? But more than likely, I'm not. But what I will say is that the opinions in the Great Reset reflect what we are shifting towards, and that leads me to the next topic, and that is the descriptive statements from the World Economic Forum. So the World Economic Forum put out a video that was very controversial. In fact, it was so controversial that the World Economic Forum had to shut the video down and get rid of it. It was basically something like 10 things to expect by the year 2030. And one of the things that it said was, by the year 2030, we won't own anything. We won't buy anything. If we want like a gadget or some kind of a tool, we'll just rent it. And then what we want will just be delivered to our homes by a drone. The drone will carry the product, drop it in front of our houses, and it's ours for a duration of time, and then we have to give it back. So we won't own anything. That's one thing that it predicts. That's one thing that the World Economic Forum has predicted, and that pissed off a lot of people, and people were saying the World Economic Forum is communist, et cetera, et cetera. And it's like, well, the World Economic Forum, yeah, it's very, very nefarious. Like, it is creepy that they would say that. Another thing that the World Economic Forum described or predicted was that America will no longer be the leading power of the world, and that's probably true. Like, the American empire has been declining. We saw that really when Bush was president, with the invasion of Iraq and how devastating that was to the morale and to the spirit of the American military. The war in Iraq and also in Afghanistan has really destroyed America's morale to the point where we don't really want to see these wars anymore. We just want to be isolated. We don't want to be the world's police any longer, and I can't blame people for having those opinions. Another thing also is under Trump began to propose policies that were actually quite popular for as far as America's global eminence goes. For example, Trump began to reduce heavily the American military presence in Germany, which was huge. Like, this has never happened before. Germany has been a occupied country, U.S. military occupied country since the end of the Second World War. And so what Trump did was unheard of. But Trump began to do it, and a lot of people supported that. So it really was a sign that the American empire is declining. So all empires fall, all systems crash, to use that song from Boxcar Racer. It's a band that doesn't exist anymore. All systems fail, and eventually the American empire isn't going to be in the same position that it is, or that it has been since the post-World War II era. The World Economic Forum predicts that eventually the world is going to be dominated by a cluster of countries, and that makes sense. I mean, we are seeing the rise of countries that used to be empires. We're seeing the rise of Turkey, seeing the rise of Russia, we're seeing the rise of Japan, of Germany. So yeah, it makes perfect sense that regional powers are rising back to become empires again. I'm not saying that America is going to be a third world country. Obviously, America is going to be a powerful country, but it's not going to be the leading nation of the world. It's eventually going to just isolate itself, just like it did before it entered the Second World War. Then we go to Klaus Schwab again. He is the main contriver, the main thinker behind the Great Reset, and he said something that was very, very revealing. He said that we can expect the world to be angrier because people are not going to have access to things that they need, like medicine, like hospital, medical attention. And he says we need to have a system by which people will have access to Medicare, access to medical attention, or else people are going to become pissed. So in other words, what he's saying is that because we have a system where once we have a crash, once we have a crisis, millions of people get laid off. People don't have full access to the hospital attention that they want. People become super angry. And then what happens? Now, Schwab didn't say this, but this is what I'm saying. What happens when people become angry? Who do they go to? See, this is why I'm not too worried about this Great Reset thing. Who do people go to when they get enraged by the system? They're not going to go to Klaus Schwab. They're not going to go to some CEOs in the World Economic Forum because they're the enemy. They're going to go to some crazy populists. That's who they're going to go to. So expect to see the rise of populism. We already saw this in a very inchoate stage in 2015, 2016, and 2017. But then it kind of relaxed in 2018, and now it's been completely eclipsed by COVID. But eventually, the fog of COVID is going to dissipate, and once that happens, the aftermath of this disaster is going to materialize, and we're going to feel the full effects of it, and people are going to become more and more angry. And there has already been predictions on another market crash Harry Dent, who was considered to be a big doom and gloom guy, he said that by 2023 we're going to have another economic crisis, and that could happen. But what I do believe is that we are going to become more and more angry as a society, and with anger comes populism. With populism comes nationalism, tribalism, racism, and with all that stuff comes violence. And with violence comes war. So everyone's like, oh, the Great Reset, yeah, they're going to take us to the gulags. I don't believe that's going to happen. Oh, they're going to try to destroy capitalism. Not exactly. One thing that the Great Reset wants to do also is to say is to limit what people can obtain. So, for example, here's one line from the Great Reset. It says, disregarding everything that we do not really need. Oh, you don't need that stuff. So we can determine what you need. So it's, I think, a reflection of what is to come. It's a reflection of what people are angry about. They're angry. A lot of people are angry about the system. And with anger towards the system comes the desire to destroy the system with all that stuff. When you destroy the system, when you destroy the status quo, what replaces it is probably something a hell of a lot worse. And that's why I was always against Brexit, because now with Britain no longer in the European Union, Germany no longer has an obstacle to do what it wants, and Germany can become more and more powerful, and you're going to be seeing the rise of more and more government, bigger government. Because when people say, oh, we don't want this system anymore, we want something else, well, the people are very, very powerful in the fact that they have the numbers, but they don't have the money. And so what eventually happens with these populist movements is that they get capitalized on by people who are very powerful and very wealthy and very strategic. And people who are in the power structures, they just get more and more powerful. So, yeah, that's what I think about this Great Reset thing. I think we're going to see the rise of more and more mob think, more and more populism, more and more anger. The Great Reset wants to reform the system, and I think that is a reflection of what we are going to be seeing more and more of in the political atmosphere of the world, the desire to reform the system. So things like socialism are going to become more and more popular. You're already seeing this. It's right there already, and we're going to be seeing more and more of it. The decade of the 20s is going to be a very weird decade, and that's saying the least. Anyway, I've talked long enough. You guys just heard some theology. God bless.